Good morning, George.
Good morning, Nicole.
How are you doing?
I am well.
We've met so many times now. Recently, I feel like we've done a few of these together.
Enjoy it always, and thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to kick off. I'm here with someone that's become a good friend of mine, whether he likes it or not. George and I are talking increasingly more and more throughout the last couple of years. But George is a huge wealth of knowledge in an area that I haven't touched on the podcast yet, but I really would like to. And it's very niche, and it's something I enjoy and something that I partake in from the Gibson Sotheby's International Realty side. And George has actually written books on it. So that's going to be mergers and acquisitions. And so I wanted to let George introduce himself and talk a little bit about his most recent book that he's written on the topic.
Thank you, Nicole. I'll try to make this brief, but I've been in the industry a long time, more years than I like to talk about. But started out learning the industry from Merrill Lynch, the M&A industry, and then went over to a small company at the time called HFS that became Sendent, that became Realty, that became Anywhere, and did a lot of their acquisitions on the NRT side. So especially in the Eastern United States, a lot of their large acquisitions. But about 25 years ago, I sort of took what Merrill Lynch had taught me and others had taught me and put it into a book called Acquiring More Profit. And it actually came to be almost the foundation of the modern day M&A industry. So a lot of the principles people are using all over the country now, and I've been very pleased. I joined Wave Group, which is a consulting group, about 3 years ago. And Victor Lund read the book again and said, you need to really just update this. So Victor finally pushed me. So Victor and I co-authored the update, which is Acquiring More Profit, which we really took the original concepts, which were a 10-step process, and really added to those primarily from everything that we've learned in the last 20 years. And that's been a really enjoyable task because it sort of reminds me and reminds others of what the process is really like. And that's just been a pleasure working with Nicole and her team there and using a lot of those tidbits and tools that we have in the process.
I love it. Yeah, I personally really enjoy the M&A in general. I really enjoy working with you because you are so good at it that you manage to make it simple because it is like a puzzle. And we can get into the relationship that we have and your relationship to companies that are going through this process and why that's so beneficial for both sides, having that neutral party to sort of walk you through unemotionally through the numbers. And I also wanted to do this because I think a lot of people avoid the conversation. It's funny, I was having a conversation with a good friend earlier about getting a pre-approval. And I was just saying it's kind of like a company, like she was like, oh, I'm not ready. And I'm like, you don't need to be ready. You just need to get it. You need to seek because they're going to tell you where you're at and you're going to know if you want to be, higher and then how to make it higher, right? Do you need to save more? Do you need to pay off one of your credit cards? You'll have now your roadmap versus just kind of like avoiding the conversation because you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be pre-approved for where I'd like to be. And so I think that's what I wanted to make sure got across today. I know that's what I wanted to make sure it came across today was if you're thinking about, I don't even know if I'd say if you're thinking about selling, I don't know if you agree with me. I don't think that, and I think everyone should talk to you. I think that there should be like a financial wellness check for your company every year. I think you should always have a valuation. It's like your health. You go to the doctor probably once a year, you should to just see where you're at. And what I like about it is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look in the mirror and just say, this is where we're at. And these are the things we can do to improve. But if you don't go to talk to someone like you, who can break it down where the company may be at and what the company may be worth, then you're waiting until the last minute when you need to sell, or you're in a situation where, time is of the essence and you can't do much about it. So that was why I wanted to kind of get you on here because you've been so great for us. And I think that we could maybe start to break down what that relationship is, if that works for you.
Yeah, no, that works well. And so do you want to do a relationship first or talk about the valuation and structure?
Let's talk about the structure first, and we can kind of weave that in. So just the basics of evaluation. When I say that, what does that even mean?
Yeah. So if you do a strategic plan, which we strongly recommend, everyone should have a strategic plan, you really almost have to do evaluation. I don't know how else you keep score. In evaluation should be done annually. So I believe you're either going to be a buyer or a seller in the next couple of years because it's just a dynamic changing industry. So if you want to grow your company, you can recruit more agents, you can get those agents to be more productive, or you can do M&A. But look at the top 50 companies in the United States in brokerage, all of them got there by doing M&A. They were really good recruiters. They were really good at training and marketing and systems, but they really got there through M&A. So the cornerstone of really an M&A discussion is the valuation. And that's where you and I work together closely, because you'll find someone that may be interested in selling or thinking about it. And then you reach out and have me do a valuation, or someone like me do a valuation. And the reason you do that is because the M&A process is truly a process, but it's sort of a fragile relationship. So where people can get, I guess, off-centered is a debate over what the company is worth. So it's really nice to have a third party come in there and educate the seller and educate the buyer. In what I try to do with the valuation is right down the middle, because it has to be a really good opportunity for the buyer to make money, but it also has to be an opportunity for the seller to profit from everything they've done.
Right.
So valuations to me are the cornerstone really of the M&A process, and understanding whether you want to be a buyer or you want to be a seller. And when you meet with people, you may not know.
Mhm.
It may be an opportunity for you to buy another company. Even if you're small, you can buy a larger company. And if you're a smaller company that just may not have the tools and resources, and you don't want to invest into the next level, maybe it is time to sell.
Yeah. You're like when you try to get life insurance, and they send, you have to go and get your vitals and stuff like that. You're not going to argue with the nurse. Like, no, my blood pressure is not that. Like, yes, it is. Like, you're that great neutral party that's just looking at the black and white facts of, we have to get just a baseline on what this looks like before we can start the conversation on what the value is and how we could move forward. And that is the reason we've been able to do what we've been able to do in the space, because of, well, one, your temperament, it so well that it's completely unemotional, and you simplify it so well for people that frankly just don't do this every day. And it isn't us delivering the news of, this is what we think, you're coming in. It's not about thinking, it's about black and white facts and math. And this is where we're at. And it allows us to then move forward, like you said, where everyone kind of wins. And obviously it's such a niche industry, where your assets have legs, and you have to think about sort of, a lot of these are on earnouts. So can you describe sort of what the earnout looks like when you talk about a buyer and a seller both winning? Can you just talk me through, like, what does a successful acquisition look like for both parties?
Yeah, so I'll even go back one more step. So it's really important in the valuation process that we educate the seller and buyer. And what we try to do is to both agree on what the true adjusted earnings of the company are. And in privately held companies, the financial statements rarely, if ever, reflect what the true earnings of the company are. And so there are many ways that we have to do adjustments. And a lot of those in small companies are that the owner may take 100% of their commissions out, or they may leave 100% of their commissions in. They may own the buildings or in charge an exorbitant rent, or no rent at all. And they may have family members working for them where they're paying or they're not paying. So there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made. So many times they'll say, well, my financial statement said I'm earning 200 grand. And they may really be earning 400, or they may be earning 100. And so what we try to do is to educate both sides on the process so that they agree on the adjustments. If we can get a seller and buyer to agree on the adjustments, then we're just debating the terms and the purchase price. But if someone thinks a company's earning 200,000 and the seller thinks they're earning 400, there's just no way that you hear multiples, you hear terms, you just can't come to an agreement. So that's probably the best tip that I can give today on evaluation, is it has to be very transparent, and both sides really have to agree that these are good adjustments and these are fair, and this is what the company is really earning.
Yes.
So once we can get to that point, then we can debate over what multiples are. We hear about multiples all the time. And it's really, what are you multiplying by? Is it truly a good adjusted earnings? And then sometimes people will go back 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And it really depends on the historical mix. It depends on the market. depends on a whole number of variables. So we sometimes adjust it with a weighted average. So we come up with a value or a price. In today's marketplace, typically there's a down payment, and sometimes that can be as low as 15% and maybe as high as 30%. And then the rest is answering your question, which is on an earnout. And typically it's performance based, so that if the company is worth $1 million, you may put $200,000 down, and the rest would be paid over 3 to 4 to 5 years, with 3 being the typical payout. And then we would just factor what the company dollar is, which I like to generate my earnouts off of, or it can be off top line, but company dollars is usually a fair mechanism. And then we just do a percentage so that the earnout will pay for the total purchase price.
And
In many cases, we'll give the seller an opportunity to earn more. So if the agents do better with the new tools and services, they can earn more. And then in turns, if something terrible happens and the economy goes even further down, then it adjusts so that the buyer doesn't have to pay for performance that they don't get.
yes, and that's a key that I want to underscore is, unlike other industries where this is more of a niche, is it's so important to hitch your wagon to a company that's going to take your agents, your company to the next level, because more often than not, you are on an earnout structure. You are a part of, so it's not just, here's my company, here's my paycheck, don't care, walking away. Like, it's more important, I think, to be able to rely on the company that's taking the reins to get you where you need to be and to get your agents where they need to be, versus just that number start, because that number might not be, that you need to be able to rely on the buyer.
Yeah, and in many cases, and this is not all, so with a majority of the smaller companies, the owner is a producer, and they left a nice opportunity to open their own company, and they were going to do it differently, in that they were going to have agents and manage them, and everything was going to be good. But it's really hard in this environment to be a small company with an owner producer. And so those are viable candidates for someone to buy, or if you're in that position, for you to sell. Because in many cases, the company that's going to acquire you will do a better job at training, at marketing, and management, and working with your agents than you will, because you don't have the time. You're there trying to produce and doing it part-time. And so in a optimum transaction, the seller is going to believe that the buyer is actually going to do better for their agents than they can do. And in most cases, that's true, where they do provide more tools, services, training than the actual seller can buy. So there is an opportunity for there to be an upside to this. So the seller gets to go back into production, and they do much better than they did with part-time management. And then the agents also get new tools and services and ideas from the acquiring company that makes them better. So it really is a good thing in many cases for a smaller company to be taken over by a really quality, good company like Gibson's.
Thanks, George. Are you comfortable saying what like a standard would be industry wide for a multiple, like a range? I know a lot of people wonder that. People ask me all the time.
So I will start with the smaller companies. So maybe under 3 million of gross commission income. And in that range, currently the sellers are wanting to be in the 4s, and the buyers are wanting to be in the 3s. So it usually ends up in the high 3s or about a 4. And again, you have to multiply it by the correct number. So we try to look at the last 12 months more so than we do at 23 and 22. When you go to $3 to $10 million, then it goes into the 4s. And then if you're above 10 million, you can get to the high 4s and maybe a 5 as a multiple. And then even, above 50 million, it can get to the 6s.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's funny. People ask me that aren't in the industry a lot. I should have said that. It's interesting. People are always, anyone who's had M&A experience not in real estate is kind of fascinated by the niche of it just is so different. I keep saying that, but it is.
And let me add why there's a difference in size is that typically the larger the company, the less risk there is to the buyer. If you have a small company that's doing $1 million of GCI, you have one agent leave or two agents leave, and you've lost 20 or 30% of your GCI. So again, if you're a $20 million company and a few agents leave, it's an infinitesimal percentage.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you. Um, so then and I know this isn't set in stone and we don't want to belabor it, but it's on everyone's mind. And I think it's going to be, to your point, if you're going to be a buyer or seller in the next couple of years, this might accelerate it, is this NAR settlement that's coming here in July. And it's not like doomsday or anything like that, but I did want to go over just, is there anything you feel? So we're looking at that from a standpoint of, like I said, when you get your valuation done, you're going to look at things and you're going to say, how could I adjust? Is there anything you feel that somebody could do as a business owner to look and just say, do you take all your buy sides? Do you take them down to 1%? Is there anything that you have thought about or could recommend that someone might do to lay over that valuation right now? Or just to prepare their company?
Well, many times we get asked, how do you prepare to sell? And what you're always trying to do is to look forward. What's it going to look like in 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years? And that may be making some structural changes within the company, adding management, taking management away, opening offices, closing offices. The same with a NAR settlement. We always like to do pro formas when we do analysis of what an acquisition will truly benefit both the seller and the buyer. And so right now, I think you will look, what does 23 look like or 24 look like? But more importantly, what does 25 look like? And what's the settlement going to do? If you break up the buy side and the sell side, will there be a reduction in commissions? Some people think there will be slightly, and some people think that, it'll be about the same. But I can tell you as a fact, over my entire career, there's been commission compression, and it's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So the consumers are wanting to pay less for commissions, and agents are wanting more for their individual commissions, and that's going to continue. So when we do a pro forma now, we just have to sort of best guess, what that settlement's going to mean to a certain business. Is there going to be some buy side reduction in commissions, or there going to be less commissions for any reason? But as importantly, you just have to factor the agents are going to get a little more, and the consumers are going to get a little more in each passing year. So the margins have been, as we all know, they've been shrinking.
For sure. And this is going to be one of those moments in time. I personally think there's been so many, like, I think if you could look back and like you said, your career has been so long in this industry, there are moments that everyone was saying, this is it. But also those moments took a lot of perseverance of getting through and changing. And I think everyone keeps saying it, and I don't necessarily agree. Everyone keeps saying, oh, this will make agents who are like new or aren't good, like just get out of the industry. And you know what, that naturally happens anyways. If someone isn't committed, I actually think it's going to be the really good agents that are maybe toward the end of their career, and the really good broker owners that are maybe toward the end of their career that have said, I've gone through enough of these moments in time, and it's just going to be a big enough change that they just might not be interested in the undertaking. I think that the biggest benefit is going to be, I mean, I sound biased, but I feel like it's going to be like a young, nimble person that's been in the industry for a long time, whether you're an agent or a broker owner, and you are willing to make this undertaking, and calling George and saying, hey, is there anyone in my market who doesn't want to take this on? Because that's going to be where the opportunity lies, is just who wants to figure out the new way, because it is going to be a new way.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a new way. And I'll age myself a little. When I started in the real estate industry, mortgage rates were somewhere between 14 and 17%. And I didn't know any different. And I think that's going to happen in a year from now. When this all shakes out, you're going to bring a whole batch of new people into the industry that won't know any different. And this is how they transact business. But
Right.
Nicole, you're right. There are people that have been through this, like I have, a long time, say, oh, I just don't want to go through another change. That may be
Yeah.
saying, this is the time to sell. This is a sign. I just don't want to go through all the new training or whatever this happens to be on the outside or on the other side of this. I'm just ready. And that's when
Yeah.
you should call, get a valuation, see what you're worth. And there are great companies out there all across the country that are absorbing other smaller companies, and the owners are happier, the agents are happier, and it really works well. The
Yeah.
model works for a
That was
reason.
really the genesis that I wanted to do this today, is because I also feel like between now and July, right, this like looming over us, people are like, what can I do? What can I do? And like to your point, there are things you could do or adjust for looking into the future. But one of the big things you could do is pick up the phone, call George, and just kind of know where you're at right now. That's the best thing you could do, I think. Because this is obviously something that you've gone through so many times, and it's a process that can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges that people see when they, from a buy side or sell side, or just from both, from getting to the closing table together? What are some of those challenges that you see, and maybe how can we avoid them?
Yeah, so the major challenge does revolve around always the price, the value. So if you can get a third party to help you there, I think that's the most important. And then on the buy side, you have to understand that the seller. The seller has put their blood, sweat, and tears into this company for years and years and all their money. So you have to be very empathetic and understanding and help them really get to their next chapter, we call it. And from a seller's
Yeah.
standpoint, the seller needs to know what the next chapter is. And we always ask, what do you want to do in 3 years? Or what do you want to do when you grow up? If you weren't in real estate as an owner right now, what would you be doing?
Mm,
And that's a really good question to ask yourself. Is that if I didn't own this real estate company, what would I be doing? Oh, I was really happy doing it, being a producer. Or I always wanted to go into development, or I wanted to go into the mortgage business, or there's always some answer, or it might be retirement. So both sides really have to agree on the numbers, but most importantly, how do you get the seller to the next chapter? Do they want to be a producer? Do they want to retire to Florida? Do they want to get into development? And that's the real compromise. And I think leadership on both sides is that they have to be honest and open, but it's really the motivation factors for the seller and the motivation factors for the buyer. Do they align, and can you help each other get to where you want to go?
yeah, I love that. And I think when you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that for both sides, I feel like a key to success is like really getting to know the seller, to your point,
Yeah.
to figure out what is it that they want? How do you help them get to that next phase? But also getting to know them and all that they've put into the company, because that's usually the key to success for that group. So when you get to know the seller and you respect all that they've put into that company, and truly like look at it as like, this is your legacy. These are like, you need to be able to take those agents and fold that in right away. You can't just come in with the way you do things. So you have to do that homework anyways, to be sure that you're continuing on with the way that they were taking care of their own team, whether it's 3 agents to your point or 300 agents. There was a way, there was a culture, and you don't want that to go away. Well, can you tell us where people can find you, where they can find your book, all of those good things, just so they know? And of course, everyone that's listening knows they could reach out to me to be connected with George, but I just want to make sure they know where to reach you.
Yeah, probably the easiest is in my email, which is george@wavegroup, WAVGROUP.com. And you can get the book there. We've got actually 2 books there, or you can get it at Barnes & Noble or at Amazon if you'd like. And also, you're welcome to give me a call at 706-455-4933. And I'd be happy to help. And we just do a lot of consultations with just people that want to talk about M&A, and be happy to do that.
Awesome. And I will grab a box of books. And if anyone listening to this just wants one of those, send me and or George an email, and I'll send you one. I'm so grateful for your time today. And I think we'll do another part 2 on this, but I guess the homework I'm leaving everyone with, if you're a broker owner listening to this and it's just in the back of your head and you haven't done a valuation, call George, do it before July. Have that be something that's in your control that you can do, and take a look at that. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Nicole.